We're going to deploy a Java Spring Boot app in this video. And I'm going to show you how to do it onto Blossom. So to do that, I'm on the Blossom documentation site right here. You click on View Docs. Under there, we're looking for this quick start here, Java, then Spring Boot. So what that does is actually takes you to a documentation page that tells you a 3-step process. We're going to visit the Blossom itself, quick starts page, and then you just choose that example and you click deploy. So I'm going over there now, and you can see here's a Java Spring Boot app. So you click configure and deploy. Now, I am on Blossom Cloud now, and you can see it's already kind of selected a cluster here and app name. So I'm going to show you kind of what is already existing here. So I went ahead and built this cluster ahead of the demo here, but it's just a demo cluster using Hertzner, and you see one server here. That server is basically what we're going to deploy to, and you can see that there's roles here like load balancer, web, and worker. What I did was I just put everything onto one server. So Blossom is going to provide you the flexibility of whether or not you want everything on one server to save costs, or to have everything on separate servers if you want better performance, I guess, or a kind of low balance cluster. And I should point out, if we go back to docs here and scroll down to deploy to your account. So I'm using Hertzner, but you can use any of these clouds. Pretty much all the major cloud providers are supported, and you can also use your own data center with essentially no cloud if you need to. Okay, so let's go back here. So I just covered the cluster pretty thoroughly. Here's the app name, and here's the repository. So let's grab this guy, and let's go to the repository here. So it's just a kind of quick start jokes app. So it's just gonna show you some jokes once we deploy this. And I want to point out the next step is container registry. So you do have to configure or set up a container registry. I'm using Docker Hub here to push the image to, because what Blossom does is it essentially builds a Docker image. But I do want to point out, look at this repository. There's no Docker file. So what Blossom does is it reads your source code and it figures out what it needs to build, whatever language you're using, whatever framework, and then it builds a Docker image with that, and it pushes it to the repo that you can configure here. Now, I want to point out the Docker file is optional, but if you need extra customization, so you can always use a Docker file or a pre-built image if you need to. So there's different ways you can kind of use Blossom there. The next section is environmental variables, and here you can see there's example key value here. So that's how you provide environmental variables onto your app there. And last is the database. So I also created a database ahead of this. So if you go to services here, then you can see I created a Postgres database, and the Postgres database is actually running here. You could go and create, because this is a Postgres database, you can have multiple databases on the database service, and you can even configure backups and everything. If you kind of go in here, you can configure essentially dump backups down here under settings. So that looks pretty good. Now we're gonna go ahead and click create app. So what that does is it creates an app based on that quick start, and then it has this arrow bouncing up and down telling you to click deploy. So I'm going to click the deploy, and it starts the deploy sequence now. So the deploy sequence, you can see it basically create a log here. If you click on that, this is going to take you into the app's deploy log. The app's deploy log, you consider like the master log or the parent log, is the overview log, and it shows you the high level commands that are going to be executed across your cluster or across your fleet of servers. And here we only have one server here, because again, I collapsed it down in order to kind of save costs. But if you have multiple servers, then what you're going to see multiple child server logs here. And the nice thing about this is that you can see the overview logs up here, so it doesn't get too noisy. But then you go and see the details. You click on here, and then you can see, look, it's basically downloading, looks like from Maven Central here, and installing things. It's essentially going through the build phase. And once it's done building, it's going to push this image up to the repository here. But while that's kind of building, let's actually go back to the demo app right here, and let's go explore. So here is the dashboard. You can see this is the overview dashboard that we were looking at earlier. You click on get repo. So what we did was in the quick start, it basically configured this, but you could always kind of set up in multiple steps, especially let's say you need private repositories. You just select a private repository there. You select a provider, have one already connected here, but you can always connect to your own provider. GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, all of the major ones are supported here. So you just connect to your account, and this allows you to connect private repositories onto Blossom's platform here. And then Blossom will be able to download the code and build your image and everything. And as part of connecting to any of these Git provider vendors, there's going to be a button to allow you to essentially set up a webhook with that vendor. and then it's going to basically set up CI/CD within one click. So then you have essentially continuous deployment, where any push to the repository is going to result in the deployment actually kicking off. That's pretty nice. Let's see what else. Docker registries is the next one. So you can see I'm just pushing up to kind of my repository here, my Docker Hub repository. But this is where you can link to your own registry. So all registries are essentially supported. So ACR would be supported, right? Docker Hub supported. You can see all the other ones kind of supported here. And then what happens is it's going to authenticate to the repository in case you need to pull down or push up to that repository. And this is where you specify what to push up. Okay, databases. This is a Java Spring Boot app, so there is a database involved here. So you can see this database is kind of connected right here through this database URL here. So that database URL is exposed as environmental variable right here. So you click on environmental variables, you can see down here it's exposed down here. You could reveal the values there. But these are kind of magically provided because you link the database association there. If you need just, let's say a database that's NAC, one that's created by the Blossom onto your server, let's say RDS, then you would just add a variable up here and then you can link it up that way. And here's the example variable that we had in the quick start. So let's see where we're at in the deployment right now. Go back to activities, go click on here. So went past the build phase, then went past the release phase, which is basically running like a release phase hook. So you can run migrations or any other setup you might want to run there. Then the deploy phase, where you can see it just essentially use Docker Compose to start your service. So that's the beautiful thing about this. It keeps it nice and simple. Then it creates a managed domain that basically it's gonna sync. So this managed domain is basically just a short URL that is gonna provide you with immediate access to your deployed application here. Let's go back to logs, and then the last sequence in deployment is the load balancer or proxy tier here. And then that basically is gonna set up the load balancer. And again, remember I collapsed the servers down onto one server with the load balancer role right there also. So now we go back to dashboard and click on view app here. You should see the demo app, the jokes app there. It's up and running, right, on our short URL there. You can see all it is just welcome to the jokes app, and basically saying, okay, let's view all the jokes here. And this is connected to a database and everything, so you can edit. It's a full CRUD application there. And there's some documentation links to the rest of Blossom there and more quick start information there. And that's how you deploy a Java Spring Boot app onto Blossom. Thanks.